Well, folks, we might just have a crisis on our hand. A figure manufacturer might have just underdelivered on their promises and everybody is pissed about it. Seriously though, I wasn't really planning to make this video so soon, but I was very curious and I just got this figure in the mail. So I figured why not. Today's figure haul should be an interesting one, and there's also a theme running throughout this video, but you'll figure it out as we go through it. But anyways, let's start talking about some figures, even one that I've held on to for like 7 years and never opened, and I'm not even kidding. We'll do the headliner first this time though. Here we have Bridget by Spiritale. Yeah, so early impressions of Bridget were pretty bad, which is the last thing you want to hear when you're waiting for your figure to come in the mail. Let's get her out of the box though, and then I'll explain what I'm talking about. Alright, how we get her on? Why doesn't it want to go down? Yeah, I don't know, I just cannot get her foot flush with the base, which might be a problem because she is very heavy and also likes to wobble quite a bit, as you can see. So the stability of this figure, not the best. So Bridget I actually picked up from Otaku Mode, but unlike last time, they actually shipped her out immediately, which was a very nice surprise. I think I paid about $200 for her, shipping included. They charged me about 20 bucks for EMS, but the shipping label was about 9,000 yen. So I definitely got a pretty good deal there. But yeah, I could already tell that there's a bit of an issue here, and it has to do with her hair. The early photos were like so saturated to the point where it almost looked like those little banana runts like the candy. It was pretty damn bad, but I gotta be real, it doesn't look nearly as bad in person. That being said, I'm not letting Spiritale off the hook. One of the main reasons I bought this figure was due to how nice her hair looked. And while it doesn't look nearly as bad as I assumed, it's nowhere near as nice as those promo photos. The depth of colors here is almost non-existent. It's a very flat yellow paint with maybe like a hint of shading here and there. Compare that to these photos though, where her blonde hair gradates naturally between a few tones and then shifts to an orange at the tips. It looks so much better. As for the rest of the paint job, it's closer to as advertised. Her outfit was never supposed to be like super bright, so the muted blue of the hoodie looks pretty good here. Same with the rest of the palette used for her clothing. The drawstrings, the crosses and stripes, all the text printed on the sleeves and the hood, the smaller details are actually pretty clean here. The gold paint for various elements like the buckles and larger crosses are likewise muted like the hoodie as to not pop as much. Even the gloves have some complexity to them as they aren't one shade of black. Metallic paint is used for specific elements of her design like the huge cuff and the zipper, along with the yo-yo like the bullet casings and the gunmetal interior. Not gonna lie, I was expecting the red to have a bit more of a luster to it, so I am a little disappointed in that regard. I think I'm gonna be saying this a lot today, but her pose is just like the main art used in Strive, where she's kind of just like strutting along happily with Roger in tow. If you play the game, you're definitely familiar with it. And it makes for a good pose for a figure, especially since they added some extra pizzazz to the base. The smoke clouds and stars were a really good idea, and it's all shaded very well. The pose highlights her personality and cuteness, as well as her legs, which are a nice and healthy size. And I gotta say, I really like how thick Bridget's eyelashes are. But I think her face starts to look slightly off if you're not looking at her straight on. Still cute overall though. And then all that's left is Roger, which the figure automatically gets points for. Bridget figures are always better with Roger. He's got nice light brown paintwork with some appropriate shading, and the stitches and button eyes are sculpted really well. It's also fun that you really get a sense that he's being carried due to his overall pose and the slight crease lines on the arm that he's being tugged at. I gotta say though, he's a pretty big teddy bear and I'm not super confident in how he hangs off of Bridget's arm. Like surely gravity is gonna take over someday and like unplug him or drag the figure down. I'm not really sure, but definitely something to worry about. Overall, I think I'm a little torn on this release. It's not terrible, far from it. Spiritale definitely delivered on most of their promises, but like that hair color, man, it really throws off the rest of the palette. It also doesn't help that her artwork and promo photos are plastered all over the box just so you can immediately remind yourself of how they messed up. I think I like her enough, but I wouldn't hesitate to replace her if a better Bridget figure lands on the market. One day, I'm sure that's gonna happen, but I'm definitely not pre-ordering anymore. I will just wait to see how they turn out. Alright, next up, let's do a figure from 2022, May by Broccoli. Now, unlike Bridget, May is a character I actually play in Guilty Gear. I don't know, something about her gorilla moveset really compels me, I can't help it. But yeah, I've had this May figure ever since she came out, but the only problem was I had to ship her by boat, because they wanted like 8,000 yen EMS just to ship this one figure. Yeah, no thanks, wasn't about to do that. So by the time I got her, which was around, I think, April of 2023, I was just busy with so many other videos and I could not find a point that I wanted to talk about her, like what video to throw her into. So we're doing it now. I could finally unbox this figure and see how she turned out. I just don't get how they could charge 8,000 yen for this box. It's like a little heavy, but it's not that big. Oh, there's zero assembly. I like that. And the hat's magnetic too. Super simple. I was actually a little worried about the scale of these two just because Spiritale always makes their figures like a little bit bigger than you would expect, but they seem to pair up real nicely. This is a very cute pair of figures if I do say so myself. While Bridget has like 30 different figures to choose from, May never got so lucky with this being her only real option on the market. Well, this and a recolor, but yeah, slim pickings. May is also my first broccoli figure, I believe. Always nice to see a company's quality firsthand. But yeah, outside of like the lack of Mr. Dolphin, I actually really like this figure. I mean, first and foremost, if you're looking for a figure of May, you want it to look cute, and this certainly does. A bright and cheerful smile, an energetic pose, something about the way she's stepping forward while hanging onto the anchor is very cute to me. It almost looks like a little twirl of sorts. And yeah, then there's her redesign that she got in Guilty Gear Strives. A lot of characters saw new redesigns, and May was no different. She kind of ditched her pirate garb for a comfy sweater and an oversized puffy hat. And also the spats. Everybody seems to love the spats. It's definitely a look that fits her, though I would argue less inspired overall. I don't know, I do like it regardless, I'm not really complaining, but it does feel simplified. At least they kept the skull and crossbones on her hat, which I feel like is pretty important just to like her overall look. Something they do with the new design though is add a lot of stitching, which you could see running throughout the hoodie, as well as her big squishy looking boots. I think they have a fun design to them. But yeah, that familiar orange and black color scheme is fully accounted for here, and broccoli shading is definitely on point, very vibrant where it needs to be, but slightly gradating into darker or lighter shades when appropriate, keeping the palette cartoony but grounded at the same time. I'd say her hair has the best paint put into it. The light brown looks excellent. And hey, you could even take off her hat if you'd like to see more of her flowing hair. But removing her hat is kinda sacrilegious, so we're not gonna keep that off for too long. Few more details I'd like to highlight for you. She's got little heart tattoos on her thigh. Her backpack has a really goofy face on it, which is a reference to Chimaki, who's somewhat of a mascot for the series, I believe. There's a couple of pins and badges on her hoodie and hat for some extra flair, and this entire time I really never talked about her anchor, which is absolutely massive. The paint job looks relatively simple from a distance, but up close you could see that they actually painted on some dirt, so there's like some subtle weathering here, which I really do appreciate. It definitely helps the paint job a lot. As for her base, I believe it's supposed to be a piece of May's ship, which makes a whole lot of sense. I think that's a great idea. Has a worn down metal appearance to it. The orange looks great if you ask me. Though the size of this base makes this figure like deceptively large. Well, that and the anchor, of course, but yeah, I think you're gonna need a decent amount of like real estate on your shelf to display May here. Honestly, there's just a lot of personality packed into this piece that it's hard not to love. It's got good vibes, an adorable presence, it's heavy as shit, it's great stuff. I'm happy. Alright, so we've cleared the table, as you can see, moved the figures back there, just needed to make some room. Next up, let's talk about a figure I've had since about 2018, Jam. Another one of my mains actually, still sealed in the box. I swear I'm not a hoarder. I just didn't want to miss out on this figure back then. And I'm glad I did pick her up back in the day, because now this figure is pretty damn expensive. I want to say she goes for about $300 to $400, at least on a good day, so yeah, that's pretty terrible. But now it's time to finally unbox this one, unseal it, ruin the value, and check out what I've been missing out on. So Jam here was manufactured by a little company known as Aquamarine, and if you've been collecting for a few years, you've probably heard that name before. Sadly, they're no longer around as they filed for bankruptcy back in 2020, I believe. And while Good Smile Company did step in to pick up some of their projects that they never got around to, the state of their previously released figures seemed to be all wrapped up. Basically, re-releases never gonna happen, I think. Probably, which means the aftermarket can do its thing. And for a popular franchise like Guilty Gear and a fan favorite like Jam, that price is only going to go up unless another company steps in and finally makes a new figure of her. But that hasn't happened yet. Enough of that though, how's Jam? Well, she's got a few years on her, releasing back in 2017, and Aquamarine was never like a top tier company, but there's plenty to like if you love the character or the Zerd art style. Just gonna get this out of the way though, her base is atrocious. It's huge, it's dull, and you even get a big ass metal pole to stick into her hair, which we'll get to, but my lord, you couldn't even try a little when designing this base? I shouldn't even use the word design. The base is here to do its job, and that's it. Anyway, if you know Jam, then this pose should look very familiar to you as it's based off her main arts from Zerd Revelator, highlighting that she's an up-close fighter in a few ways, such as her stance, but also her legs, which have some absolutely exaggerated muscle definition. It's way more noticeable on her right thigh to the point where it stops looking natural and really just throws me off, but hey, the girl's got some thick, strong legs, and now you'll definitely remember it. You also might have noticed that her double-layered skirt is fairly short, and it's very easy to see her underwear without even trying, which is honestly not that surprising. I'm pretty sure there's a mechanic in one of the games, one of the versions, where her underwear changes depending on which day you're playing the game. So honestly, it just feels like a nod to that. But yeah, there's definitely an element of lewdness to this sculpt that's surprisingly accurate to the source material. The way you can just fully see her entire stomach and chest through the clothing, it's almost like she's wearing nothing at all. She looks pretty damn good from all angles if you ask me, and that's again thanks to the pose. Her hands and sleeves curving about just draws you in, and her cute face keeps you invested. I don't think everybody's gonna dig the art style of this figure, but I think I actually find this figure to be cuter than the art itself that it's based on. And I'll admit, I'm a sucker for her color palette, but the paint actually seems really well handled here. The vibrant mix of reds and oranges for her outfit, and that lovely gradation of brown tones for her hair. I think her underwear might even be painted pearlescence now that I'm looking again. But yeah, her hair as a whole is just nuts to me. It's a little hard to even describe, but it's just this massive hoop of hair that's tied up by this golden clip up here, but then there's also a bunch of spiky looking strands exploding out of it. Love the look, don't get it at all, but it's so big and heavy that it needs its own support, which is why we're stuck with this metal rod. I mean, granted, she's balanced only on one foot, so extra support was going to be needed anyway, so I guess it's fine in the end. You know what's funny? I was actually doing some research on Jam, and I went to her MFC page, and I found a really old comment of mine back in 2017, just asking if anybody was giving up their pre-order. I wasn't smart enough to pre-order this figure, even though I liked the game and the character, but at least I was still looking. But yeah, she's great. A couple of problems, but like, whatever. It's not like we have much choice when it comes to Jam. The sculpt's good, the paint is good, the base is absolutely ass. But let's finally talk about our last figure. Her thighs really are intense, huh? That is something special. Anyway, last up, let's talk about a figure that I'm kind of surprised that I even own, and that is Jacko, also made by Aquamarine. So same deal as Jam, this figure skyrocketed in price, but not only is Jacko more expensive than Jam, but she is also genuinely pretty damn rare. I don't really like using the term rare for anime figures because how could we possibly know how many copies are out there? But Jacko rarely pops up, and when she does, it's like $500 minimum to pick her up. It's nuts. Familiar base. Well, I just learned something. Her leg actually comes off so that you can put on the chain link easier. So I did this wrong. Let me fix this real quick. So this Jacko figure was actually gifted to me about a year or so ago, and I absolutely don't deserve anything like this. Let's be real, this is a crazy gift considering the price tag, but I sincerely appreciate it, and now that I do own her, we can actually talk about her on the channel, because otherwise, that never would have happened. Well, once again, we're stuck with this butt of a base, though at least this time no metal pole, as she's nowhere near as heavy. Instead, this is where her jack-o'-lantern-looking ball and chain prison weight resides, which you attach to her leg. Looking real crisp, honestly. Dark metallic gray paint with vibrant green highlighting its face and gold bolts lining the outside. Jacko's outfit is a bit of a tight one piece, I suppose, opens up by the arms and legs, got a big ass ankh hanging off her chest, and a gold studded skull belt around her waist. I feel like it was a bit of a missed opportunity that she can't actually wear the mask and can only hold on to it, but like the prison ball, it's got a cool jack-o'-lantern design to it, and it's painted in a similar fashion. The way she's painted overall is actually pretty standout, as there's a lot of contrast between not only the colors, but the finishes as well. We mentioned the metallic ball and the mask, but her suit is actually like fully pearlescent and her hair is matte. On top of that, there's a lot of like two-tone colors to multiple areas of her design, like how her hair is white on the outside and red on the inside, and her gloves and shoes are both black and red. Every element of her design is easily identifiable and appealing as a result. Just like Jam and Bridget, her poses rip straight from Guilty Gear. She's unmasking, she's running her hand down her thigh. It's nothing super dynamic, but it definitely works. Her expression is on the simpler side too, just a straightforward smile. But I'd still say her face is pretty, with really nicely colored eyes. Other than that, she's got a big honkin' halo that sticks into the back of her head, which I think looks cool. Like May, there's a lot of personality packed into Jacko's figure, and I really like just like how clean the printing is on a lot of these symbols and text. A lot of the figures had that I talked about today. I think the one big flaw of this figure though, is that her hair paint looks a bit sloppy around areas where it splits from white to red. I do really dig her hair sculpt though. The strands are pretty flat, but they also flow outward in an appealing way, and they kind of give you a glimpse at her crazy back arch just so her butt can be more prominent on this figure. This is a great figure, really not that much to complain about. However, because of her excessive aftermarket price tag, I don't know who to recommend this to. Like if you're a die-hard Guilty Gear or Jacko fan, then I get it, you probably want this figure, but it's certainly not worth $500. I wouldn't say $400 either, but that's just kind of how it is. You missed the opportunity, then you gotta pay the price. But with that being said, I kind of want to have all the figures on the table right now. Gotta get Bridget in there too. There you go. Hopefully they're all looking at the camera correctly. A little hard for me to tell, but what can you do? Either way, this has been our Guilty Gear unboxing. They look phenomenal with each other. I guess that's the power of theming, but also just how strong the designs are in Guilty Gear, whether it be the newer games or the older ones, the designs slap, and so do the figures. I will say the scales are definitely off a little bit, but it is like 3 different companies attempting a 1/7 scale, so it was always gonna be off by a little bit if you ask me. But at the same time, it also shows you how much of a crapshoot that is. Like, I feel like sometimes companies just make up the scale. They just kind of like approximate it. It's not really like on point as much as it should be, but I don't know, not the biggest deal if you ask me. I'll live, you'll live too. But either way, that's gonna do it for our unboxing video. So thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And if you wanna help support the channel, go watch my previous video on the Mio Figma. Not many people saw it, and it would definitely help me out if you did. That's it though, so take care everybody, and I'll see you guys very soon for the next one. Later.